Hello everyone, this is Moehawkman, and welcome to my beginner's guide to Kuva Liches. Now I don't normally upload videos of games other than RuneScape, but I'm trying something new and want to branch out a little bit. Before you try hunting a Kuva Lich, there are a few things you need to know. You must have completed the quest, The War Within, and have access to a railjack. You can either complete the quest The Rising Tide to get one for free, or buy the railjack from the market store. You will also need level 5 intrinsics in any of the categories for the railjack portion of Lich hunting. In order to spawn a Kuva larvaling, you must play Grineer missions level 20 or higher, and they must be normal missions, so no sorties, no dark sectors, or fissures. There is another mechanic called Progenitor Warframe, which determines the base element of your weapon, and if you're lucky enough, you can also get an ephemera skin. Whatever frame you bring into the level determines both of these mechanics. There are a total of 7 different weapon element types: impact, heat, cold, electricity, toxin, magnetic, and radiation. This chart below has all current frames up to Varuna, and if you need to look up this list later, you can check the Warframe wiki because it has the same list. Now, what weapon should you get? There are only a handful of weapons that are actually worth it. If this is your first weapon, I do recommend either a Brahma, Nucor, or Tsar. Each of these should be your highest priority, and every player should have one in their arsenal. Other weapons you can consider are the Hex, Ogress, or Tonkor. These weapons are also good, but not as good as the previous weapons. Everything else on the weapon list is either okay or just garbage and should not be your first weapon. As for the element on your weapon, I highly recommend Toxin Base because it's needed to make viral when adding a cold element mod. If you do want to build your weapon a different way, feel free to do so. You can always change the element by vanquishing another Lich later. Onto the mission itself, I prefer the Cassini capture mission on Saturn. I recommend you start the capture mission solo. If someone joins you in the mission, only one Kuva larvaling will spawn at a time, and there's no way to guarantee that it will be yours. I recommend you leave immediately if you forgot to turn off the multiplayer and restart the mission. Something else that occasionally happens is that the mission will stop being a capture mission and will switch to exterminate. I hate it when this happens and I just leave and redo the mission again because it's usually slower than the capture mission. If you don't care if it changes, just keep going through the level. The Kuva larvaling will still spawn as normal. I recommend putting on sprint mods to speed up the mission. Once you load in, get to the capture target as fast as possible, down him, initiate the capture, and then make your way towards the exit. This next part is very important. Pay attention for a flickering light effect on your screen. It only lasts a few seconds, so it's a bit hard to see sometimes because the level lighting is a bit dim in some places. Once this flicker happens, an invisible timer starts where you have 1 minute to trigger the Kuva larvaling to spawn. If you're not sure if the light flicker happened, you can just play it safe and kill everything as you make your way towards the exit. If done properly, a Kuva Guardian message pops up and the Kuva larvaling will spawn with a red indicator target. Down the target and stand next to it to check the weapon it has, but make sure you don't accidentally mercy kill it. The weapon it has is completely random from the full list of Kuva weapons, so you never know when the weapon you want will show up. This next part is also very important. If you don't like the weapon it has, leave the Kuva larvaling on the ground and head to the exit. When the mission is completed, whatever weapon you just saw will be removed from the weapon pool. Doing this will increase your chances of getting the weapon you wanted. On average, it should take you less than 2 minutes to run through the whole process of starting the mission, triggering the spawn, and completing the mission. If you get really unlucky, the weapon you want could be towards the end of the weapon pool, and you'll be spending 20 minutes or more trying to get it. On the flip side, if you do like the weapon, mercy kill the Kuva larvaling and make your way towards the exit. Once you finish the level and get back to your ship, a mini cutscene will happen where your Kuva Lich introduces itself. After this is over, you can see some extra information about it from the navigation map by pressing the Lich symbol on the bottom part of the screen. You can see the Lich's weaknesses, resistances, and immunities. You can also see some of the abilities it has when you hover over them. Now, I'm not going to go over everything because every base element has its own ability list, but if you do use a stealth frame, the Lich will rarely ever use any abilities because it can't see you. You can also see the rage meter here. Depending on how much the bar is filled, you will see one of 5 different words: indifferent, annoyed, fuming, furious, and enraged. The fuller the bar is, the higher the chance the Lich will spawn in your mission. From here, you can also see if your Lich has an ephemera, which has a low trigger chance of 20%, so don't be disappointed if you don't get one. The ephemera is basically an animated skin based on the frame that you brought into the level when you mercy killed the Kuva larvae. There is one thing you do need to pay attention to, and that is the weapon bonus percentage, which can be anywhere from 25% to 60%. This number becomes much more important later on. It's time to start hunting down your Lich, so what do you do from here? When you go to the navigation map, a planet will be covered in a red haze, and most of the missions on the planet will have Kuva Lich Missions added to the list. Just make sure you select the right mission with the Lich symbol next to it. Now, all of these missions are pretty much the same as a normal one. The only difference is that Kuva Thralls will now spawn alongside the normal enemies. Down and mercy kill them. There is an invisible respawn timer between thralls, which averages around 35 seconds or so, and there is also a maximum of 10 thrall spawns per mission. For each thrall you kill, your Requiem Murmur progress bar will slowly fill up. Once this circle is completely filled, a Requiem symbol will be revealed after you finish the mission. In total, there are 3 Requiem symbols that you need to unlock in order to find the combination to defeat a Lich. After completing each mission, the Lich will also steal some of your mission rewards. This can be literally anything in the mission reward screen, even rewards that you get from sorties if the mission happens to be on a Lich planet. However, once you completely kill your Lich, everything that was stolen will be given back. Now you're probably wondering, how do you get these Requiem symbols? There's 2 ways. The first way is to run Requiem relics. When you kill a thrall, it has a 5% chance of dropping a relic, which you can now use on Requiem fissures. There are 4 versions of the relics that have 2 different symbols each. There's no way to hope for a specific relic since it's all random. Now for the fissures themselves, I only do exterminate or rescue fissures because they are the fastest ones to complete. Now this isn't really a beginner thing, but if you do have access to the steel path, you can also run Kuva survival missions and get some Kuva and steel essence while also getting the Requiem symbols. The other way to get these symbols is from other players. If you have nice clanmates, you might be able to get them for free, or you'll just have to buy them from other players. The regular symbols are usually 5 plat each, and ools are usually around 20 plat each. If you're lucky, you might be able to find a seller willing to bulk sell a full set. I personally recommend only buying the symbols that you need for your current Lich, and hope that you get enough relics to run your own fissures. With enough time, you'll have so many relics that you won't even know what to do with them. Now that you have the symbols, what do you even do with them? Simply go to your equipment and go down to your Parazon, and place your symbols in whatever order that you want. After that, you need to go into another mission and hope that your Lich shows up. Deal enough damage to make it fall to its knees and attempt to mercy kill it. It will test your Requiem symbols in whatever order that you put them in. A correct symbol will be shiny whitish yellow, and an incorrect symbol will be red with a slash through it. If your symbol is correct, 1/3 of the Lich's HP will be gone, and you will need to read down the Lich to test the next symbol. If you fail the sequence test, the Lich will immediately leave the mission, move to the next planet, and increase its rank by 1, which increases the Lich and mission difficulty. I must mention here that Kuva Liches will always go to the next planet in the same order. Starting from Earth, it will move to Mars, Ceres, Sedna, and lastly to the Kuva Fortress. If for whatever reason you still fail rolling your Requiem sequence, it will just reset the Kuva Fortress missions. However, if you've done it properly, you will never see your Lich on the Kuva Fortress, which I'll go into further detail in a little bit. Whenever your Lich moves to another planet, it will also reset the rage meter back to 0. After you complete the mission, I recommend you change your Requiem symbol order before you move on to the next planet. Sometimes I forget to do this myself, and I end up using the same combination twice and wasting my time, so please don't make my mistake. There is also a bug that occasionally happens when you try to change your Parazon from the navigation map, rather than changing it from your arsenal menu. If you go straight into missions after changing your Parazon this way, your new combination doesn't always save, and it can also screw you in your next combination test, so please double check before exiting the menu. Now, my preferred method to solving the combination requires unlocking 2 symbols and having an Ul which acts as a wildcard. The reason why I use this method is because of the RNG aspect of a Kuva Lich spawning in the level. Sometimes, before you even learn your first symbol, your Lich can spawn in your second mission, so what do you even do then? Well, you have no choice but to force your Lich away by downing it 3 times and making it leave. To counter this, I put my Ul in my first slot, and then whatever my next 2 symbols are will be in the 2 slots after that. Doing this also allows me to get some Kuva with every single combination test. If the second symbol is wrong, I just switch the other symbols, leaving the Ul in the first slot, and then I test it again. If this combination is wrong, I know by process of elimination that the last symbol will be in my second slot, and I can just 50-50 the first slot and the third slot. Now if this last combination is wrong, I just switch the third slot and the first slot, and this will be the correct sequence no matter what. This is why the Lich will never be higher than rank 4 using this method. Just like all the other methods for testing symbols, there are pros and cons to each one, including this one. The Ul can potentially be replacing one of your known symbols, and there's no way to know until you fail. If you find a method that works better for you, feel free to use it instead of my method. Once you find the correct sequence, your Lich will leave the planet, but make sure that you do not leave the mission early. Stay until you complete it, because there is a 25% chance of getting an Ul symbol as a mission reward. Now here's a little bit of extra useful information. Each symbol has 3 charges before it becomes unusable, meaning that each individual symbol can be used for 3 separate Liches. Now what do you do with these unusable symbols? In the mod machine that is across from the foundry, you can either scrap them for credits, or transfuse 4 broken symbols together to make a completely new one. Now you can finally get to the mission of hunting down your Lich once and for all. This is where your Railjack comes into play. In the upper right corner of the screen, you should see your Railjack tab, but this time there will be a Lich symbol next to it, signifying that your Lich has been sent to the Saturn Proxima. If your Railjack isn't very strong, or you don't feel strong enough to take on your own Lich, you can join public missions and join others who also have a Lich in the Proxima. The downside to this is that you have to defeat up to 4 Liches depending on how many players join the lobby. There is likely to be a high level player with carrying potential. If not, you can leave and find another lobby with better players, but you will be wasting more time doing this. Now the Railjack mission itself is pretty straightforward. You just have to take down a random number of fighters and cruise ships until you are told to go to the main Grineer ship where the Lich is stationed. Once inside, fight your Lich just like you did on the planets. The only difference is that this time, when you mercy kill the Lich, a mini cutscene will play, and you will be given 2 choices of action. One is to convert, and the other is to vanquish. I will go over both of these options. I will start with converting first. Converting a Lich essentially turns your Lich into a servant, and it will occasionally spawn in whatever mission you're doing and fight alongside you. The downside is that this is only temporary, and your Lich will leave on its own after a few minutes of fighting. Another small benefit to converting a Lich is that you can put it on your Railjack as a defender. This does require tier 8 intrinsics and command, but this feature is pretty pointless in my opinion. However, neither of these 2 previous things is the reason why you would convert a Lich. The biggest reason you choose this option is to sell your Kuva Lich encounters to another player. This does require that either you or the other player have a Crimson Chamber room in either player's dojo before you can trade a Lich encounter. If you do plan on converting a Lich to sell, you need to know that you will not receive the weapon you were originally hunting from the Lich, and there is no way to reverse this action once you confirm your choice. You will have to start an entire new Lich to get the weapon. Now I'll move on to the criteria for selling a weapon. It's pretty straightforward. Number 1. The weapon must be a good weapon, something like the Brahma, Nucor, or any of the other weapons I mentioned earlier. 2. The weapon bonus must be at least 50%. The base element doesn't matter too much for most weapons, but toxin, heat, or radiation is preferred. Number 3. The Lich must have an ephemera. It doesn't matter which one, but it will greatly increase your chances of selling. If you want to sell your Lich encounter for the highest price possible, you need to fulfill all 3 of these conditions. The only condition that has a little leeway is the weapon damage bonus percentage. You can go lower than 50%, but the selling price will drop with it. I'll give you some examples. Let's say you have a 55% damage bonus with an ephemera, but the weapon is a Karak or Twin Stubas. That weapon isn't worth very much, maybe 100 plat at most. However, if you get a 55% damage bonus Brahma with an ephemera, you can probably get over 250 plat depending on the buyer. Just remember, most of the time, converting a Lich is only viable if you plan on selling the weapon, because keeping your Lich for railjack defense or random mission encounters is pointless. Let's move on to the second option of the final Lich encounter. After you pick the Vanquish option, you will kill the Lich and finish the railjack mission. The difference now is that you get to keep the weapon once you get back to your orbiter. An inbox message will pop up giving the weapon and the ephemera if it had one. Now this weapon doesn't appear in your inventory, but in your foundry. Just go to your foundry and claim it there, or you can just leave it there if you don't have the inventory space. If you do decide to claim it from your foundry, you will unlock a new feature regarding Kuva weapons called Valence Fusion. This feature only works if you have 2 of the same weapon though. Now, do you remember earlier in the video when I said the weapon bonus percentage would be important? This is where that number comes into play. If you go into your arsenal and equip the Kuva weapon, go into the extra options as if you were going to use a Forma on it. This is where you will find Valence Fusion option. It's a straightforward feature. You take one weapon and fuse it into the other weapon, making it stronger or changing the base element if you choose to. As you can see here, my Kuva Yanga is 2 different elements and damage percentages, so when I fuse them together, it will take into account the higher number and add 10% to become the new damage bonus percentage. I also get to choose one of the elements between them and change it if I want to. Now I must warn you that order does matter when you Valence Fusion weapons. I'll give you a basic example. Weapon A is your standard Kuva weapon, and Weapon B has some upgrades on it like Forma. You can fuse Weapon A into Weapon B and everything will work out just fine. However, Weapon B should not be fused into Weapon A because you will lose any Forma that you put on it, essentially resetting the weapon back to 0, and you will need to do it all over again and waste more resources. The simplest way to make sure you don't make this mistake is to not Valence Fusion until you farm enough Kuva weapons, or pre-equip the weapon before you take the others out of the foundry so you don't get confused between which ones they are. Now I do personally recommend that you farm at least 3 to 4 weapons of the same Kuva weapon before you fuse them together. The reason for this is that you could get lucky and get a higher starting percentage so you don't have to farm too many extras. Also, when you do Valence Fusion, make sure one of the first 2 that you pick is the highest percentage one that you farmed so far. For example, if you get a 30%, 45%, 25%, 28% weapons, start with the 45% and fuse all the other 3 into it one by one. Do not fuse the 28% and the 25% together because you will be losing 1 extra fusion chance into the 45% weapon. There is one last thing I should mention. Whenever you convert or vanquish your Lich, you have a 25% chance of getting a Requiem Ultimatum reward. So what does this item do? It is a one-time use item that forcibly spawns your Lich regardless of how full the rage meter is. You can literally spawn it on the first mission of the next planet if you'd like to, or if you get frustrated by a Lich not spawning normally. Now I can't tell you when you should use it, but I personally only use them when I have completely filled all 3 symbols and the rage meter is barely filled. This way I don't have to waste 20 to 30 minutes hoping that my Lich shows up. But the situation doesn't always play out exactly like this, so it's best for you to figure it out as you go. That's the only way to play a game like Warframe. You need to run some tests yourself and do what's best to your playstyle. And that is everything you need to know about Kuva Liches from beginning to end. This was a bit of a long one, but I hope it helps you greatly in your Kuva Lich hunting journey. This has been your fellow gamer Moehawkman. Be kind to one another, stay safe, have a nice day. Peace out, everyone.